Hello and welcome back to the Self-Actualization in the Age of Crisis chapter analysis series. I'm your host, Ron Rivers, and in this series what we do is we try to summarize the sections of Self-Actualization in the Age of Crisis in under 5 minutes. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 1, section The Crisis of Productivity and Participation. So if we were to summarize the crisis of productivity and participation in one sentence, it would be that there is a misalignment about our traditional conceptions about productivity and participation alongside the evolving human consciousness that has come about with our technological ascendancy. We are more than our circumstances allow, but we remain shackled to these existing ways of being and operating for lack of a better alternative. Single market maximalism also encourages a permanent underclass. So we have an entire philosophy of cooperation, essentially, rooted in transaction that intentionally creates otherness by design, which strongly misaligns with the single truth and the relational universe. Ultimately, the crisis of productivity and participation calls on us to stop worshiping our creations. We have given them a power over us that they do not deserve. So participation is one of the primary sources of human meaning. And the way we define it has always been a matter of circumstance. We connect with others to share information in an experience of mutual expansion. So work and technology intertwine. They always have and they always will. But what we're facing today is a crisis where an increasingly large section of the population is unable to contribute to our most advanced forms of work. Now, this in itself is not a crisis, but in combination with the lack of available pathways to re-educate, retrain, and more importantly, redirect the course of their lives, that is kind of what furthers this as an actual crisis. And as bad as it is now, it's only going to get worse as the furthering of advanced technologies, artificial intelligence, continues to kind of widen the gap between who can and cannot participate. Now, we can look to history. It's really fascinating. So this is not the first time that there's been this kind of transformation of technology which has demanded new forms of labor. The difference between our immediate present and the past is today there are no shortcuts. So let me tell you a little bit about what I mean by that. In the past, let's say like the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution viewed the individual as essentially an extension of the machine, right? Someone who would sit in the same place and act as part of an assembly line. They'd pull the same lever, hit the same button, assemble the same widget. And that was essentially a line of work where you could take a farmer and put them into a factory, and it was a relatively easy transition. And more importantly, once you learn to work in a single factory, you can work in any factory. So that actually gave rise to the first mobile workforce, people whose skills could transfer beyond organizations and kind of have this general skill set. But today, the most valuable employees are people who belong to what is commonly referred to as the knowledge economy. The knowledge economy is a form of work that combines persistent learning, cooperation, and the perpetual solving of essentially complex problems that require a high degree of analytical skill and, most importantly, as I first referenced, the ability to learn new things on demand. And the biggest challenge about that is there are no shortcuts, right? If I'm a developer, it takes years to develop those skills. If I'm a product person, a marketer, etc., it takes time to learn the technology. So it's not like I can take someone who is used to doing a very manual labor on a farm and put them behind a desktop and say, write me a script. It doesn't work that way. And the crisis stems from the fact that we don't have the infrastructure locally, statewide, nationally, globally, to allow individuals to kind of transcend their circumstance. Now, the critic might argue that there's tons of pathways to develop analytical creativity. There's tons of free platforms, tons of free knowledge centers, but that's not fully correct, because what we lack globally is a suite of social protections to allow the individual to focus on redirecting their lives with their full intent. When we consider knowledge economy workers, many of them are paid, for their ability to learn new things, essentially. But for someone who works an hourly wage, if they lose that opportunity, if they lose that wage, they really have to immediately find something else to kind of fill that gap, right? Otherwise, their quality of life can greatly diminish. So by not providing the available protections to allow people to redirect their lives, it furthers the crisis of productivity and participation. If we cannot overcome the crisis of productivity and participation, humanity's capacity to most fully express themselves will forever be bound to a time experience that denies their ability to do so.